I've been playing GMB maybe a little too much. And yet I don't really have any footage to show for it. So this is how to sapper, or how I sapper at least. Which is really just my building strategies for each objective map in St. Petersburg. And big disclaimer, in no way, shape or form do I claim to be a sapper expert. I just happen to play a lot. This won't be an in-depth guide on the class. There's a bunch of videos out there for that anyway. I'm not going to say what type of building or what weapons to use. I feel like everything about sapper is situational, and it's up to you to decide on what to do and when to do it. Axe is a good all-rounder, and I use it a ton, but then I bought pickaxe and the fast moving speed is so satisfying, and it also one-taps the bats in London. The spade is nice for a more defensive gameplay. Caltrops are good if you need to run away from a giant horde or pick them off one by one. Barricades have the most HP, but they take the longest to build. And I like stakes for runner protection. So starting out with catacombs, there's this first spawn I stack stakes at. You can also follow the team and build at the hideout there, but it shouldn't pose a big problem if you don't, I hope. Some people stay here to farm as well. Otherwise, if you're alone, you might end up into some trouble like this. If there's AFK people, vardos come from spawn as well. I retreat here if I need to and stack stakes. You can do barricades, but stakes really saved me here. Your cue to leave is when it says to escape the catacombs. They also end up coming from behind, so you can choose to leave low health buildings for them to break. At finale, I spam stakes. Since the sapper built some, I just added some more. I do barricades too if it looks like we're struggling to get barrels. Usually if the team is good, whatever you build here doesn't matter. Catacombs should be a free pass, so just maintain your builds and all is good. Now we're on to Leipzig. Typically there's a chaplain for this part, or players are able to easily clear the runners, like this. But we had maybe 6 players this round, so I built stakes. I built spaced out barricades at the graveyard. I used to spam stakes, but it was kind of difficult maintaining them, to be honest. And barricades are safer overall, in my opinion, for zappers. I staked the door as well, as a few spawn from below. There's this obscure spawn that you can choose to ignore, and the same goes for the ones at the fire. Prepping for finale, I like to set up at one of 2 spawns. This one is minor, and I set up here if there's another sapper at the other spawn. And obviously, be careful as barrels can pop up. I switched to the barricade in case anybody wanted to melee like earlier. Stakes and barrels do not pair well. I try not to place stakes directly on barrel spawns. I don't really want anyone to die. This is the main spot you want to build at, as it's close to the gate. I build between the graves and to the side of them. Building at the gate doesn't make sense to me. Most of the time, these buildings don't get used until the last maybe 2 minutes of the round when everyone's escaping, and it eats up the build limit for no reason when you could be pushing and building where it matters. That doesn't mean you shouldn't build here. I do quick caltrops as a last resort. Next up is Sebastian. I used to build stakes at this window, and zombies continue to spawn until the 3 planks are placed down for the objective. Building here makes it easier if your team needs to get more planks, but otherwise you can leave in advance. You don't have to build at this part. Officers or priests usually use their charge or crucifix here. For this holdout, I barricade this spawn. Most of the time there are players spawn killing, so I don't have to be here to repair often, and instead I can help with the objective and build at the top. Up here, the exact location of where they spawn depends. There's a spawn behind the door, so I close them if they're still available, and I place stakes. I cycle repairing at the top and bottom until they get the hay bale. Over here I stake the entire area. There are generally no problems if your team can kill lanterns before they throw fire. I never build for this part. If I do, then it's not much. Your team should be able to handle it. The way I've built for this finale has changed so many times. But what I've been doing recently is I put a stake to catch any barrels early on. And I place barricades here and here to do the same. Building directly on the spawns reduces visibility a lot, so caltrops are pretty good here. And I barricade some more for barrel prevention. I always try to rebuild if I can, but it's dangerous, especially if I don't trust my teammates to not shoot a barrel next to me. If we need to retreat, I alternate between barricades and caltrops to slow them down, so that either someone can gun them down in one shot or for the barrels to blow upwards. I haven't been down here in a while because I'm always defending at the top. But for the beach, I build at the far side and at the elevator. Vardo is probably the only map I willingly place bait on due to the sheer amount of barrels that spawn. But I'll also play it if there's another sapper on the team. You don't really have to build at this first objective, your team should be able to clear the snow quickly. At the church, there is a spawn inside and outside to manage. Barricade, stake, etc. You get the idea. Barrels spawn, so I tend to be mindful of that. You can build up here, but it might be hard to get up and or defend it. And quite literally, more barricades. Having multiple sappers is tremendously helpful, and you should always be regaining ground and building. Your biggest enemy aren't the barrels, but your smart teammates. You're joking. Hey, kaub, the map I like the most. I sometimes stake at the top of the stairs or in the general area because they come from behind. I stake at this spawn and by the cart. There isn't a need to have an elaborate defense as long as it gets the job done. And if your team knows what to do, you won't stay here long either. When the logs come down, I put stakes trailing up, and then I place barricades at these spawns, as well as at the spawn by the cannon and maybe before the bridge. Zombies can still come from behind when your team's pushing the cart, and I usually stay at the back of the group just to wait for it because I have to destroy my builds anyway. At finale, I sandwich stakes with barricades so barrels won't instantly pull my builds up. If there's a musician, stakes do an amazing job at protecting them. This is very niche, but when the cellar opens, you can build stakes on this specific spot. I've been able to build a barricade too, but there's no visibility at all. If there are people holding out in the cellar, I like to keep an eye out on this window for barrels. From there, it's a constant battle of building, repairing, and having everything get blown up and burned. Life as a sapper is great. I try to rush out for the start of Copenhagen and do 2 barricades for these 2 alleyways. Barricade here too. Girl spawns are scary. I built out all 3 spawns here, this one at the top and the 2 at the lower area. By the time I finish this, the stakes from earlier need to be repaired, and I cycle repairing through all of these until they get enough water to move on. I try building as close as possible to the windows here to maximize their space. You can also bait barrels at the windows without taking damage most of the time. When waiting for the ship, I mainly build here. I don't build at this spawn to be honest. On the ship, you just repair these. It doesn't need that much attention, so I hope with the cannon. I stake this for all the runners, or try to. I barricade here and here for the spawn. Barrels can be baited at this wall. Some zombies might come this way, so I build here, and I stake this for barrels. There's more distance between these spawns, so I try to prioritize the middle one. I don't like to place stakes here because unless you're looking up, you can't see if a barrel will drop down. At this spot, someone can bait barrels up against the wall. I stake for runners and shamblers to help them out. My favorite part of this map is speedboating to walk through the water faster, but an officer charge also works. I try to help my team out by being their Uber. Using barricades for movement only works on low health. If you build them, they'll contribute to the build limit and won't disappear as wanted. As a common courtesy, please let zombies break any builds by your sapper. We really appreciate it. At the next objective, I build to catch barrels, but if your team is fast enough, you won't have to build much at all. If no one lifts the plank, you can kill the zombies through the door. This should be a fast clear, but since people rush to open it, I couch hop if I need to. Players mostly spawn kill this, so I ignore it. Instead of going on the ship, I stay on the docks. If you don't defend the docks, they start spawning on the ship, which makes it difficult to push the capstan. I stake all of these posts, but barrels can spawn, so having someone to shoot them is great. I feel like the builds on the ship are a waste of time to look after. The moment you fully build them, they immediately get destroyed. Barricade the trapdoors when it tells you to. It doesn't work if you try after they open up. Again, everything is situational. I put a caltrop down to slow the barrel. I like to build here as a nice buffer, and then I help with moving the bodies. You only really have to open one door. I build at every section of the stairs and try to buy my team time to get the crates. You can aggro barrels at this spot. This is the route I take for the sharpshooter. Since this guy got shot, I built here for them before going to push the wagon. While pushing, I build where I can to help with the spawn. I see the chaplain using their crucifix, so I switch to stakes in order to prepare for the horde they're making. I retreat if I need to. I wouldn't really build in the toy store, only if I'm at the back of the group and if other players are behind or clearing. I barricade at the ladder and along this whole walkway. When it's time to make holes in the vats, I switch between building and hiding. Always building, repairing, and again pushing up until it's time to go. I build caltrops or barricades if I can as we run out. There's a lot of moving in London and Westminster, so I build where I see fit. And it's always something minimal so I can keep up with the team. At the wheel section, I place stakes and use my camera to watch for barrels, as they can be baited here. If you can't tell already, I'm very wary of barrels. This is probably the peak of my sapper career. There are many methods to handling the knight. Chaplain can crucifix, officer can charge. I pray that no one activates it before I get to build a barricade. If you time it right, sapper can also parry or brace it. I stake this entrance because a horde comes through here. I place stakes here too since zombies fall down from the window up there, and barricade this. I also might build at this location, but it's not worth walking all the way over here. If I'm ahead of everyone, I'll build before the zombies are activated. Typically, I don't need to though. I camp one of the side spawns to lessen the load on my team. I build here and at the back of the wagon to make it easier to get on when we need to leave. Some more building here. I stake and barricade to fend off the zombies that spawn while they prepare the cannon. If some people didn't get on the wagon in time, I'll attempt to clear these guys out to help them catch up. This part was such a great save, so I'm just leaving it in. RIP Chaplain though. At most, you want to have 3 sappers, 1 on each side for St. Petersburg. 4 is unnecessary. There's a 30 global build limit to work with, and each sapper can only build up to 10. Even though there's no correct way to build, you should still be placing your builds smartly. This is what I tend to do. I see my teammates to the right being targeted by runners, so I place a stake for them. I leave a barricade here to protect the person lowering or bringing up the bridge. With good teammates on offense and to cover barrels, St. Peter's is smooth sailing for the most part. You won't be the only sapper, so help out where you can. To prep for the dreaded clear sear wave, I start clustering my bows together to form a long line. Does this look silly? Maybe. But is it effective? Absolutely. Here's some clips of how this wave gate went. And that's quite literally everything. I can't be bothered to do fantasy, man. If you ever want to play with me, you can usually find me in USBC servers. And if you come this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope someone was able to learn something, at least.